All right, we will take a few minutes to allow for all the attendees to join. See the numbers going up. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are very excited to have you all today. We have a great panel discussion. All right, and as everybody starts to join, welcome. Hello, everyone. This is the second session of the Sterling Martin Associates webinar series of 2023. We're very glad you are joining us. My name is Jessica Kilman. I'm the Director of Client Services with Sterling Martin Associates. Today's title is First Time Executive Directors, CEOs, New Perspectives. Just to cover a few housekeeping guidelines, we have turned everyone's cameras off. Audio is muted by default, and the chat feature has been disabled. However, we want you to ask questions. We are here to answer your questions. So we do have at the bottom of your screen the Q&A activated. So please feel free to click on that and type in your questions to us. We are going to continue to moderate that and hopefully incorporate those questions into our session today. However, if we're not able to get to your questions today, at the end of this session, we will share everyone's direct email address. So please feel free to contact them, and also please find them on LinkedIn. All of our panelists are LinkedIn members. I will now turn it over to Brian Glade of Sterling Martin Associates.
Thank you very much, Jessica, and welcome to everyone to our February webinar. We're excited to offer this as part of our series, as Jessica mentioned. My name is Brian Glade. I'm Vice President for Client Services at Sterling Martin Associates. We will go through our introductions. We're going to talk about how to prepare for the executive leadership role, how to develop a personal onboarding plan, what challenges you can expect, and then tips for success and pitfalls to avoid. You may be asking, well, why this topic? So during over the dozens of assignments that Sterling Martin has filled over the last year, 2 years, it often comes up as when we do our due diligence as part of our process. We talk with the client and particularly the search committee. And one of the questions we always ask is, would you be open to a first-time CEO, executive director? We call those step-up candidates. And we usually get a mixed response. Some say yes, some say no, some say, well, maybe we should see them first before we decide. So I thought we'd address this subject by asking directly to those who have achieved that top role for the first time. And so the agenda will go through the process. We tried to narrow it down. This, as most webinars, probably is overly ambitious about what we can achieve in an hour. And we do want to encourage you to ask questions along the way. And so we will fill the hour, I'm sure of that. And so we've assembled an outstanding panel. As we say, we know these were outstanding candidates. We always say we love all of our children equally. So we had lots of choices, but we decided to invite these 3 panelists today. So I'll just ask them to introduce themselves first. Why don't we start with Erica?
Okay, great. Hi, welcome everyone, and thank you for allowing us to be here today. I'm Erica Holland. I am the Executive Director at the American Society of Breast Surgeons. Our organization, as you might expect, membership primarily of our about 3,500 members are breast surgeons who are involved in treating patients with breast cancer and benign breast disease. I have been in this position since October of 2022, so happy to say I made it through the first year and then some, and very happy to be here with my co-panelists today.
Thank you, Erica. Dan?
Hi, I'm Dan Ignazewski, and I am the Executive Director for the National Alliance for Eye and Vision Research and the Alliance for Eye and Vision Research. One of those organizations, the National Alliance, is a 501c4 advocacy organization whose mission is to advocate for federally funded vision research. And the Alliance for Vision Research, Eye and Vision Research, the mission is to try to elevate and educate members, key stakeholders, and the general public around the value of vision research and the impact that it has on patients, clinicians, and researchers. Now, I've been in the role for 13 months, actually. I think as of today, January of 2022 was my my start date, and I've really enjoyed the position so far.
Thank you, Dan. And then Jackie.
Thank you so much, Brian, and thanks to all for joining here and alongside of my colleagues, Dan and Erica. My name is Jacqueline Price Osapo. I am the executive director for the Society of American Archivists. And folks always say, what is an archivist do? We didn't know that you actually existed. Archivists believed in safeguarding information and specifically our past as it happened for the protection of your civil liberties. So as we look at what's going on with our presidents, past presidents, current presidents, archivists believe that if you work for the people, the information belongs to the people and it should remain with the people. So the information should never be separated from the actual people. I have been with SAA since July of 2021. So I am coming up on my 2-year anniversary. And if I had to do it all over again, I would do it the exact same way and go for this ED CEO position. And again, thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, Jackie. And then we're gonna get to that question, I'm sure. So one of the things that I often think about, being in the nonprofit world, in associations, professional societies, I don't know that any one of you had actually grown up thinking, I want to be the executive director of a 501c3 or a 501c4. When I looked at your backgrounds, I saw some commonalities. And so I'd like to talk just to ask you about the background that you have and how it prepared you for the role. So for example, I saw each one of you as part of the executive committee in the most previous role. Each of you probably had pretty long tenure in your associations. I think it was over 10 years for sure. And each one of you was in a kind of a specialist area. Dan, you were in government relations. Erica, I think you had specialized in meetings. Jackie, I saw a lot of membership roles. So when I looked at all of that, I'm wondering, how did any of that prepare you to become an executive director? And was that your life's mission? And so you thought about that as you went through your career. Who wants to start and take that question first?
I can kick it off. It's funny you say that, because I originally got into nonprofits, not really knowing what I wanted to do, right? Coming out of college and thinking, okay, what does a career look like? What can this be? And I actually remember having a conversation with my CEO. I was in an organization that the CEO asked me about 2 months into her new tenure, where I saw myself in 5 years. And I didn't have a good answer. I said, I thought I'd see myself as director of government relations. And that was kind of my focus. I was really focused on that government relations track. And throughout that conversation, and then in subsequent conversations with her, I was given opportunities to be able to expand on that role throughout my career. And I think that was key to my development and preparation for this role. Basically what happened was, I was focused on government relations. That always maintained my primary responsibilities, but then I was also given opportunities within the budget, within, doing departmental budgets, then grant budgets, doing more work in communications and marketing. I actually ended up, because I was doing a good job with some of the relationship building with some of our key stakeholders, got more involved in the development and sponsorships and some of our events. And I was able to expand in some of those areas, not necessarily taking the lead role in every single one of them, but overseeing some of those areas and some of those opportunities. And as I got exposed to more and more areas within the organization and more skill sets that I was learning and expanding upon, I started to realize that executive director was something that I actually did want and could attain at some point in my career. And so that's where, a couple of years down the road with some of those progressive responsibilities in my previous organization, that's what kind of opened my eyes to the possibility of that executive director role. And that really allowed me to continue in my primary path, but also see what else was out there and get a broader look at the organization.
Right. I did see that in your background too, Dan. I actually saw that in Erica, your background as well, that you had got on from meetings and conferences into a broader role. How did that prepare you, do you think?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I think you'll hear a similar theme to what Dan was describing, and I think all of us know that our organizations, usually just by the nature of what they are, there's a lot of opportunity to get involved in other areas and to learn if you're willing to do so and put yourself out there. I mean, I would say for me in particular, being involved so early on in my career with the meetings and education of the organizations that I was working with, you know, certainly you would consider something like an annual meeting of your group to really be kind of the confluence and convergence of everything that the organization does coming together. So you certainly get a unique vantage point around your governance committees and work, the education and content that your members are so invested in, but certainly also from an operational perspective, you are a leader of the staff. You're organizing things, you're responsible for infrastructure, technology, all the things that make your meeting happen. And clearly, as most of us know, and found out the hard way during COVID, that our organizations really do rely quite heavily on the revenue that comes in from those programs, whether it's from our attendees, corporate supporters, or otherwise. And we learned how much we missed it when we couldn't get together. But again, I think it really gave me an opportunity to play a leadership role among staff, be recognized for leadership among, you know, the governance, the board, et cetera, but also really gives you an opportunity to get your hands in a lot of different things that are going on with the organization and having to understand them, right? Because if you're putting it all together, you have to know why and the reason behind that. So, you know, I think that's where I started to get that drive and desire to, you know, ascend in the organization as well, but also ultimately to assume a true CEO leadership role in an organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Jackie, you said that you love your role, and it sounds as if you were destined for this, but how did you prepare yourself?
And I would say my preparation probably started long before I even knew that I wanted to do this. And that was my first job with the Emergency Nurses Association. I started from the bottom up, and I do mean the bottom. I came in stuffing envelopes. And a project that someone had and needed some help. I had a friend who was working there. She said, well, you want to come in like 2 days a week to do this little project for us? So I opened the envelopes like my natural curious self to read, like what's going on. And I was like, what is the association? What the heck is this organization doing? And I moved on from there. I moved into a receptionist position, and you'll see a ton of things on my resume. But what I will add to what my colleagues just said, and the common theme was saying yes. So while my focus was on membership, but I said yes to a ton of other things. I said yes to overseeing the transition of the migration from one AMS to another AMS. And I can say that I didn't sleep for like 3 months. I said yes to education without knowing exactly what I was doing when my CEO comes in my office and say, okay, I want you to develop the business portion of annual meetings. So I need you to design the education. I said yes, and I had no idea. But the key to saying yes to all of those things is having the resources to go back and figure them out. So I will just add to what my colleagues have said, and my success and my journey was me saying yes to a lot of things, and many things that I did not have the skill set for, but I went out and figured it out, and I learned. So
that's, yeah, you have to say yes. Obviously, a key part of landing the top role is the interview process. So even though you think you're prepared, you've had this strong background, you've broadened your expertise. Any tips for interviewing? And I'll just say, how do you go in without having that chip on your shoulder, like, well, I haven't been a CEO before. They're going to ask me, why do I think I should be a CEO? Give just a couple of tips of how you found yourself in the interview process, promoting yourself as a potential first-time ED.
Yeah, I can jump in. I mean, I think that for me, it was really going in with confidence. I mean, I think that the thing is you have to understand that you've made it to an interview process because you do have the skill sets, right? And I think that recognizing that in yourself, you have to go in confident. And I think that you know, it's not so much having a chip on your shoulder so much as I know that I can do this because in my experience that has led me to this point, I've done all of these things that are required of this position. And I think that going in with that knowledge and going in with that information and sort of background, and just that confidence, I think was essential for me to be successful in the interview process. I think just being able to then highlight at a really high level, in preparing for the interview, where are those areas that as a CEO, as an executive director, these are the areas that I know that are responsibilities for the position, and these are the areas where I have done those in my experience. Maybe not at that executive director level, but in my in my previous officer role, I had played that role. So that was helpful for me.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. We've talked a lot in any kind of, career seminar about preparation, and being prepared to answer those questions that go beyond perhaps what people see in your resume, and show yourself to be that executive. Any other similar experience, Erica or Jackie?
I mean, certainly I echo everything Dan said about being confident in what you've learned over the course of your career. You don't have to have sat in every chair in an organization to take the CEO role. You need to demonstrate that you understand how to make connections among ideas, departments, and areas, and that you can successfully lead people in the right direction. But to take a little bit of a different track in terms of the being prepared and things like that, that's a little different than what Dan said. I would say, don't forget about your networks of people that you know. And you know more people always than you think you know. And really having some conversations with people who have gone through that process, I found to be very comforting. I think we all would know what to expect, but you always get a little bit of a different perspective from different people who have gone through that role. And I think that you can go in a little more confidently if you feel that you might know, what to expect from, how it's going to look when you're in the room and hearing different people's experiences. I guarantee yours will be totally different from anything that they've described in the end. But it's great to get that perspective and to hear what they're emphasizing, in terms of what they wish they would have known, going in or would have been prepared for to talk about. You can't over prepare, I don't think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. And that brings up another question around mentors. Did any one of you have a mentor that you turned to? And it wasn't just to prepare yourself for the ED role, but along your career, and how important was that to you for preparation? Jackie, you shook your head. Yeah. So I think you probably have a good anecdote.
Yes. And I'm going to go a step beyond mentor. One of the things I did early on in my career is create what I call my kitchen cabinets. And we know that, if we think about the concept of what's in your kitchen cabinets, there is a ton of stuff in there. And what I did was I looked at the job that I wanted. And so I created a network of folks who had the job that I want to sit in that space as being mentors and leaders. I also have a network of folks who are doing the job that I have, and a network of folks who are doing the job that I used to have, so that I can be a resource to them. So I am constantly in my kitchen cabinets, relying on my mentors and relying on those bosses that made your career prickly, because that's where the growth happened. So I say, take advantage of all of that, absorb all of that, because if this is the role that you want, you will someday be leading folks along that journey who may have all of those experiences, all of those challenges. So enjoy the uncomfortable stuff. Find yourself a mentor. And I'm going to take that back. I'm going to say, find yourself mentors, more than just one, and find mentors from diverse backgrounds. They don't have to look like you. They should not have the same job, maybe working in the same profession. So look for someone, if you're in medical, find someone who's outside of medical and utilize those mentors. I will say that this job that I have today came to me from my network. So, and my experience was, I'm at 8:30 in the morning, I'm working from home for AHIMA, and I get a text message from a colleague who said, I was contacted by a search firm for a job, but I think it's a job for you. So I'll send it to you. My second text message was from an old executive director who's a mentor that said that I was contacted. This is the perfect job. And the last message came from a friend who they actually reached out and asked her to apply for the job. And she said, you're a better candidate. So here's how strong, Erica, you couldn't say it at a perfect time, that whole resource that you have, those mentors, mentees, and all those relationships, you will need them.
Mm-hmm.
So
and it's so wonderful.
Kitchen cabinet, do so.
Absolutely. And Jackie, it's amazing how generous people really are with their time And, I have done it for colleagues. I will continue to do it because I've been the beneficiary. But I mean, when you think people are busy, but then you ask them to just take a look at a resume or cover letter and what they come back with for feedback. You talk about a presentation that you might be doing for a search committee, and they're so willing to share things that they've used. They may not be the same topic area, but, as a guide, I've always blown away by people's generosity of their time and their experience. It's amazing. So I agree 100%.
I would completely echo everything that's been said. I think that that anecdote and the kitchen cabinet, I think that's great. I relied on mentors throughout my career, previous executive directors, some folks in DC from the business side, from the law side. It was that breadth of experience across my network and key friends that I've made over the years. Has been essential in my career growth and the opportunity to be successful in a number of different areas.
Jackie, I know everyone's always talking about remodeling their kitchen, and in this case, these are cabinets that you want to keep.
The thing is that you can remodel your kitchen. You can change the outside of the cabinet without changing the inside. So what do they call it? Resurfacing. My mom told me about this. I was like, you're going to do what? She said, I'm just going to change the outside of the cabinet. I'm not going to replace the entire cabinet. So change the outside of your cabinet, let your cabinet grow, pull out that prickly drawer and go and, that junk drawer in my world is my prickly drawer. And everybody has one. We all have a junk drawer. Learn from the junk drawer and keep opening it.
I want to move on to the next. So you've landed the top role. And I think of that scene in the candidate, Robert Redford wins the election, and he's sitting on the bed in the hotel room saying, "Oh my gosh, what do I do now?" So when you have this realization that you're in the spot, everyone talks about the first 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 100 days. Is common. Tell me about what you did when you arrived and how you set out to succeed. What did you do first? Erica?
Well, I'll take a stab at it. I will say, be prepared to be flexible, but don't try to wing it. That's not what you want to do. You want to go in, conveying confidence in your staff, in your leadership, those who selected you, that you do have a plan. So I would say make a plan and share the plan. It's not a personal thing. It should be out there because you want people invested in helping you achieve it. Write it out and share it. PowerPoint, handouts, whatever, keep it in front of yourself, keep it in front of the people that you're working with. I personally, like a matrixed approach. So I kind of divided my plan into 3 areas of governance and members, staffing and operations, and external relationships. There's any number of ways that you could look at that, and really kind of then thought about what was an orientation, what was an education, what was collaboration strategy, but set milestones, tangible milestones that you and other people can understand in there. And it can be complex or it can be very simple. And if you want to put in one of your first milestones in 30 days, you are going to have a one-on-one conversation with every board member, share that out, and then do it. And then actually do it and keep it in front of you. I had one for a year. I have to admit things changed a lot around the 9-month mark in what I thought I was going to do, but that's okay. People want to see that you're able to flex and evolve the more that you learn. But I would say write it out and share it. It's great to let people know what you're doing. You're being transparent, and it's accountability for yourself as well.
Mm-hmm. Dan, happy anniversary on your first year. As you look back, did you have a plan in place?
Yeah, I did. I definitely echo Erica's comments. I think, I came in with a 90-day plan. I sort of planned out, okay, here are my targets and what I want to accomplish at 6 months. Here's what I want to accomplish at 12 months. I still have a 18 and 24-month plan, but like Erica, I've had to pivot quite a bit. I think in the first, in coming in, having a plan is key. And I think that outlining what you think you need to be able to succeed is going to be really important. And communicating that to your staff and to your stakeholders and partners is really important. I think that where the rubber is going to meet the road, though, is once you actually get into the position, there's a lot that you're going to learn, a lot you're going to figure out, and you have to be open to understanding and hearing from those stakeholders and those staff and things like that to understand why something was done the way it's done, how things can migrate from one area to another, what the infrastructure is, what you need to identify all of those sort of things that you don't go in knowing when you're applying for the position, but you start finding out pretty quick. And I think I emphasized early on with the staff that my first 6 months, I wasn't going to make any significant changes. I really wanted to focus on saying, let me learn the organization, let me learn the priorities, let me identify those things. I still had goals within those first 90 days and for the first 6 months, but I really took an emphasis and made an emphasis to learn the organization, learn the community, learn the stakeholders, and really engage that way.
Mhm.
Thank you. And I'll just add to outside a listening tour with your board members and with your members. I am the first person of color to sit in this space with SAA. So that was something very different and something new for the society and for membership. And while being welcomed by everyone, I did not take advantage that I am something very new. Just from the outside perspective. So spending some time with the membership, having those conversations, talking about their goals and their wishes, not making any promises. This is a listening tour. And I want to know, what's the prickly thing that you're dealing with? I'm not saying that I can fix them today, but I want to understand them. So that was part of my journey and part of my 100-day plan, and learning as much as you can about the profession and admit what you don't know. So, SA is very good in terms of transparency. And I can go to that website and I promise you I'll find something I've not seen before because we have a ton of information. So what was helpful for me during the interview process was learning as much as I can so I can sit in that interview. So I probably spent a total of 60 hours preparing for this job interview. 60 hours of my own time in researching and making sure that I was comfortable. The last thing I'll say is you're going to have to resettle your staff. And that's going to be the toughest part. That is the unknown variable here is the staff. So your board members will tell you everything they need to know about the profession, everything that they know about governance from their perspective. But what you will not find out until you walk in that door and pull up your sleeve is what's going on with staff. And that will be the toughest part of this journey, is getting a handle and reselling staff, because I stepped into the space as someone who had been here for 18 years. So there was always like, this is how it's always done. This is how it's always done. I was like, well, this is not how this girl do things, and having to say that with peace and security. The last thing I'll say with staff is that, and I said this to my staff today, just had a staff meeting, I share what I can with them. So in terms of transparency and honesty, I said, I will share what I can. And there will be some days when I can't share it. And when I can't share it, I need you to respect that space. And I will simply say, I can't share this right now. So I share what I can with them. Mm-hmm. And that builds trust and respect.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point, Jackie. There are several key relationships. One is with the staff that you've inherited. Another is, we're all in association management. We know how important that relationship with the board and the board chair or president is. Any steps, any tips you have in terms of how to establish and maintain a good relationship with the board chair? Dan?
Yeah, I found early on when I first started, I started out with weekly calls just to do a quick touch base, just to make sure that sort of we were hitting markers and understanding all the intricate details of what the board was requesting of me in the position and what the priorities for the organization were, making sure everything was aligned with as I was learning things. And then we transitioned that, we still touch base either bi-weekly or monthly, and that's sufficient for my organization. I think some people do it more often, some people do it less often, and whatever works in establishing that is key. I think building that relationship with your board chair and your board president to be able to say, what is it that you need to hear from me, and what is it that I need to understand from you for your direction and your priorities, that we're making sure that we're aligned. And as long as we were in sync in those conversations and those calls ended up being relatively brief. We were able to kind of hit on our high elements and kind of identify what the strategies needed to be and what the challenges were. I was very fortunate. My board chair has been absolutely fantastic during the transition this past year, and given me full latitude and flexibility to be able to do the things that I felt needed to be done. And I think it was partially in building that relationship early on with the the weekly calls and then transitioning it to a slightly less frequent but still meaningful conversation on a regular basis with them.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Erica?
I'll echo the communication point. And I think that, one of the things that seems obvious and we embrace, but then when, it actually comes time to do it, it's a little trickier is, our board members are very accomplished, very busy professionals. And there's always this kind of last minute hesitation of, am I bothering people? Am I communicating too much? Am I, and you want to be presenting yourself always that, you have your systems in place, you're working in the right direction. But I would say, don't forget how invested your board, especially your leadership, are in you being successful. They want you to succeed. They want you to do well. They want to know that they picked the right person for this role to lead. So they will always be willing to talk to you. Don't feel like, bothering, whether it's setting up meetings or understanding, do they prefer to text or on the fly phone calls or wherever it may be. And also, don't be scared to approach them with, ideas and requests for the tools and things that you need to be successful in your job. And whether that's something internal or, it's negotiated out at the beginning, don't be afraid to ask those questions and things. It's not a sign that you don't know what you're doing. It's a sign that you're being forthcoming, and they really, really want you to be successful. So use them always as that resource. Last thing I would put in there is always remember that what the search committee always thinks is going on and sees the direction of the society or the organization isn't always consistent with what the entire board thinks. They may be some of the same people and overlapping, but don't go in assuming that you understand the direction that you need to take from leadership from just those initial meetings. Really check that against what the other leaders are saying and feeling so that you can, amend and flex and set the agenda as needed. They're not always the same.
Right. Yes. We love all our search committees the same.
Mhm.
Jackie, I know you well enough. You were smiling. That means something resonated with you.
I'm a constant smiler. Thank you.
Well, I'll be turning to you a lot then.
Yeah, I smile even when I'm crying because my father gave us that lesson early on. I would say, to add to what my colleagues have done, I have a one-on-one meeting with my president and president like weekly. And we move in the fashion of an agenda because I'm an agenda-based person, because here's how we get things accomplished. So I invite them to bring in agenda topics. And what I do is collect agenda topics and things that have been going on. I don't shoot off emails to my president like in every single situation. I hold those things until we meet, because I understand, first of all, they're professionals and they're also volunteers and they have a life. So I'm very, very careful, because as a volunteer myself, I appreciate when the organization understands that I have a life. So I manage the agenda, I manage my correspondence related to them. So we sit in this one-on-one meeting on a weekly basis. And it is a great time for me to get to know them, honestly, the first year. And we didn't always talk about work. We laughed and talk about, like, my last president told me that I like plastic candy. And I was like, what's plastic candy? She said Twizzlers. And I was like, I didn't know that was considered plastic candy. I meet with my executive committee on a monthly basis. And with my entire board, we meet on a quarterly basis. But I gave them my mobile number. And I said, if you need anything, call me. You know where to find me. So they have 100% access to me. Those are the emails that I'm going to answer first, because they're very good in terms of what they want. And they're very purposeful. To sort of do a check and balance on my progress and fulfilling my goals and the initiatives that they set out for me. In my contract, I asked for a 1-year evaluation. And I asked them to do that purposely because I was not in a space of waiting 2 years, 3 years for them to determine she's doing a crappy job or she's doing an amazing job. So that 1-year evaluation gave both of us, the three of us, opportunity to level set and say, here's where we were, here's where we are, and here's where we want to go. And in that, they reached out to staff, and I was completely confident with that. And here's why you can be confident, because if you're doing an amazing job, you don't have to worry about what people will say about you. And you and accept constructive criticism. Everyone doesn't agree with how you do things, your leadership style, and I accept that. So again, that 1-year evaluation was very key and critical for me to have. And it gave them an opportunity to say, Jackie, here's what you're doing well, and here's what in areas in which we need improvement.
This comes up frequently when we're advising, consulting with the search committees or task forces, is is the overlap with the previous executive. And oftentimes we see they want a month, 6 weeks. We generally think that might be too long, but did any one of you have an overlap? How long was it and how did it go? Looks
I
like
did not, so.
Erica didn't. Dan, you had an overlap?
Yeah, I did. So I came into a role similar to Jackie. My predecessor had been here for almost 20 years, and the organization had been run, smoothly and everything for that duration. And so upon his retirement, when the board was doing the search, they had identified an opportunity to do an overlap and requested sort of, what did I see as my overlap needs. And I had identified 3 weeks. I felt like 3 weeks was a good time to be able to get the information that I needed and understand sort of what has been done, why it's been done, the budget, all of the details that I needed with, a lot of intense time with the outgoing executive director. So I was fortunate in that space where I had an overlap. I was also fortunate in a space where the board prior to my arrival actually signed basically a consulting agreement with the executive director, where the previous executive director provided some time for me to be able to call him periodically to request time, information, details, answers to questions that may pop up. I didn't use anywhere near the amount of time that we had budgeted for that, but I was able to call periodically throughout the year, just to be able to do touch points and kind of understand, okay, give me a background on this. Can I have some information about this stakeholder or this partner or this member? That kind of information that was not readily available through the files and things like that. So I was very fortunate in that, both with the overlap. 3 weeks was sufficient for the full-time overlap. And then the periodic engagement, about once a month, once a month, once every other month with my predecessor was helpful for about an hour or two.
Right. Thank you, Dan. I want to transition to the next area. You've arrived, you have your plan, you're implementing your plan. What challenges did you encounter that maybe were unexpected? And the other thing I see that's common among the three of you is that you all started during the pandemic. And so that has its own set of challenges, right? You want to share any, aha moments? What challenges did you encounter and how did you handle those? Jackie?
I guess the main challenge for me would be pulling the cover back on what was going on with staff. Because one of the things that you realize as you transition, there are some folks that are very happy that you're joining them, which may means that they were unhappy before. And there are some folks who are not so happy. So I would say the challenge was what's going on with staff. And again, sort of trying to ease folks into the space of, I know that we're going through something tough. And I said that in a staff meeting. I said, you're new to me. I mean, everyone's like, we have to get used to the new person. Yes. I said, I realized that it's also new for me. I mean, it was new for them, but it was new for me. I said, so I'm trying to get to know and understand 11, 12 people, and you're trying to get to know and understand one person. So talking about that from both perspectives, that this is going to be a little bit, and I use the word prickly with them, and they know that's like one of my favorite words. I said, it's going to be a prickly train ride for a bit of time, and that's okay. Talk to me about what you are struggling with. So that was probably the key thing to me, is pulling back the cover on the staff and understanding their needs and their expectations, because every single one of them have very different needs. And I started off with one-on-one meetings with the staff and asked them to be completely boldly honest with me about their needs, their expectation, their disappointments, and their excitement. And my next step was, how do I transition that into a space where they're all comfortable? And sometimes that means working with them individually. So I would say that sort of surprised to me the staff part of it. And started a job during the pandemic. I can't tell you that about 60% of I've had 60% turnover since I've started working for SAA. I now have a new person. Just when I thought, oh my God, we're fully staffed. And I was like on the verge of celebrating and said, no, Jackie, do not celebrate. This is not the new world. What's happening during the pandemic, what continues to happen, is that shift. The great resignation is real. It is real. And we're constantly in the state of the GPS system saying reroute, reroute, reroute. So I just decided that my constant state is rerouting.
Make a legal U-turn.
Or
Erica?
illegal if necessary, like.
Or illegal. We don't want to condone that in this call. Erica?
I'm good. Oh, knock on wood before I say it's next thing. I haven't had any turnover since I came on board. I've actually got to add 3 positions, so that is really exciting. However, I will say that Jackie's 100% right. Understanding where everyone kind of is in the change process. People are in very different places with that, and that's okay. So acknowledging that and working with people, individually to understand that. I would say also for me, in hindsight and things, I've learned over the course of the past year that I just need to be more direct than I thought I needed to be in a lot of different instances and circumstances. You are the new person coming in. They don't know you yet. They aren't used to your work style, how you fit into the culture. And so there may be times when you leave a conversation feeling really good about where you are on a project or with someone or something. And then a few days later, you realize you really aren't there at all. And so clarity and directness, not direct as in, hard line, these are my expectations, but be clear in your communications around your expectations, be direct. They don't know you yet. They're not reading your mind. So, take that time and be direct in those communications. I would say is something that has been beneficial to develop that in the past year, because I didn't start out that way.
Dan?
Yeah, I would say, I think the staffing points that you both bring up are really important. I've got a pretty small staff, so I don't have some of the same challenges that way in terms of overseeing, large departments or things that way with a lot of turnover. But I think, going into the job, I think the thing that surprised me, and it probably shouldn't have, but it did surprise me, was, going into the role. I mentioned my predecessor had been here for 20 years. Some of the staff have been here for 10, 15 years plus. I think that what I was a little bit surprised by was coming in and realizing that there was a lot of infrastructure improvements that needed to happen pretty quickly. And the board doesn't necessarily look at that and know the intricate details of that kind of stuff. And that's where, I was a little surprised by it, because externally the organization looked a little bit more technologically advanced than I think it was. But the board didn't know that, and the board isn't familiar with the database tracking or the email system, the email tools, the file management systems, things like that. And I think that you go in assuming, oh well, this is how it's done because this is how I've been doing it in my other job, and my other job has all sorts of tools and resources, and everything's in the cloud and all this other stuff. And I came into this role and it was a lot of, I needed to make a lot of infrastructure improvements to be able to get the organization to a place where we could more efficiently run and operate the business side of the organization. Organization was running smoothly and was running great, but just with very, very systems. And being able to update those and identify those as sort of immediate priorities was something that I kind of figured out probably in the first 30 to 60 days. And again, transition some of my priorities in that 3 to 6 month window of my goals that I'd outlined. So knowing that the board and the search committee doesn't know everything and all of the details about the position and about the intricate day-to-day operations of the organization, you're not going to go into the job knowing all of those details. So you have to be flexible and appreciate that relying on staff, relying on, if you have a chance that they overlap, all of that can be really helpful in your transition.
In human resources, there's a mantra of feedback is a gift. How often do you get feedback? Do you have feedback on you said the 6 weeks review? Is there a common approach that you're taking in terms of how often you get feedback, and how welcoming is feedback?
So you broke up a little bit for me there. Were you looking specifically on how often we solicit feedback from staff, leaders, all of the above, or?
Yeah. What's we're finding that feedback is really important, and sometimes it might be absent. So it may be incumbent on the executive to actually ask for it. And I would say either or both, Erica, staff and board.
Well, I would say staff definitely have wildly different comfort levels in providing feedback. like my colleagues on the call, I came in after a long time executive director for the organization and had several staff that had amazing tenure with the organization. So, from a historical perspective, I would say there are certainly going to be people on your staff who are going to be more forthcoming. There will be people who may be willing to speak on others' behalf. Sometimes you have to kind of figure out if they're speaking for themselves or others. But I would say, if, especially among your senior leadership staff, if there are people who are more comfortable and candid in providing that feedback, I would say get that from them, rely on that from them, ask them regularly to tell you, not like right now, but please bring things forward. But again, having that communication with staff, not just in staff meetings. And I know staffs are different sizes, right? So it's different for everyone, but I would say, really you need to have some face time with everyone on staff in all positions. It's not overstepping the reach if they're supervised by someone else, because people really want to have that interaction with the CEO. But I would say, manage your expectations around who's going to feel more comfortable providing that feedback to you. And if people really aren't, you don't need to press them necessarily. There'll be others who will be willing to provide that for you, and they will make themselves known. So take advantage of it.
Okay. Dan, what's your approach to feedback?
Yeah, I very similarly. I regularly ask staff for engagement and opportunities, and give them the opportunity to provide feedback and feedback not only from my performance and my what I'm doing and operating on, but also feedback to understand what they feel like they could be doing more of, or what they want to do less of. Frankly, I think hearing that and identifying and understanding how their positions are sort of fit within the organization is really helpful, to just have that dialogue and trying to create that open environment for dialogue. Same thing with Erica, staff comfort level with that is very, very different. But I think it's important to at least open the dialogue and have an environment where the open door policy, opportunities to be able to check in periodically, making sure that you're open and transparent about your conversations with the staff has been incredibly helpful. From the board perspective, I mentioned the bi-weekly or monthly calls with my board chair. In addition to that, I'm checking in with the board, different board members, pretty much on a monthly basis or bi-monthly basis. Just being able to touch base with them, asking what would you like to see more with me? What can I do more of to provide more value? What do you want to get more involved in? Things like that, just opening that dialogue with them, building those relationships to be able to identify opportunities where they may want to engage more, and also opportunities where I can improve or do more to meet their expectations in that way.
Thank you. We've had a couple of questions. I'm going to kind of meld them around competencies and budgeting. How important was it for you to convince either the selection committee, or once you're in the role of the board, the staff, that you have the competencies to be the CEO, especially when it comes to budgeting? Did any of you have to feel like you were going uphill in terms of convincing people that you could handle a broader budget than you had previously? Jackie's smiling.
I can answer that question. I didn't have that challenge with my board because my resume, I've been doing that for some time. So I would suggest that if you're looking to move into an ED position, and if you're not doing that, you need to start doing that because that is very key. You need to be able to understand financials. You need to be able to, on a dime, explain or chat about, what the finance look like. And if we're in trouble, what's the plan for that? How do we project out to the future? Do we do 3 months, 6 months, a year projection? And what does that mean in terms of resources, benefits, and programs? Do we need to sunset some things? For example, we had our first hybrid conference last year. And in planning for that conference, one of the things that we had to cut was our annual meeting meetup reception, and which is at the tune of $60,000 to $80,000. And I simply explain, if we want to have a hybrid conference, which we are satisfying the needs of our members, we're going to have to not do something. And being completely transparent. And Erica, like you, I go through front doors. And I say this to my staff and to my board, even my interview. I say, I'm a very front door person. I find it difficult to go to side and back doors. And I said in my interview, if I'm not, if you're uncomfortable with that, I'm not your person, because that part of me has helped me be successful. So I appreciate people who are being quite honest and just simply saying how you feel. But yes, in terms of budgeting, forecasting, planning from a strategic perspective, if you do not have that experience, go get it.
Mhm.
Part of the reason why I went to get my MBA is when I decided to become an executive director, there were some gaps in my skill set, and I got those gaps filled by going back to school. So whatever that means for you, it can be a certificate, it could be, again, saying yes. And you'll find that within your organization where you work, a lot of those growth opportunities exist. You just need to raise your hand and do it.
I agree. I came in with that budgeting experience. I came in with that finance experience, and it was gained over years of progressive additions to my influence and scope of work over those areas. So I agree with Jackie 100%. The opportunity is there to get involved in that. But, you know, certainly it feels different when you are in charge of making sure that all those targets are met and those assumptions are correct, even if you have been doing it. So, you know, I would say, again, talking not only with your staff, regular check-ins, how are we doing to budget, making sure you really understand those numbers, that you're comfortable with what you're seeing. Talk to your board about it, where you think you might exceed or fall short. You know, you are extended a fair amount of grace in that first year, right? They know that you're learning and looking, and you're making the best educated guesses. But again, that communication, whether it's with your weekly check-ins with your president, your staff, et cetera, turn over every stone. You don't want to end up, you know, a year plus in and be surprised. So turn over every stone, look at everything very, very carefully.
Mhm.
And I would just say, you know, I also came with budgeting experience. I started out initially early in my career with just my department budget, and just being able to say, okay, let me learn my department budget. Let me then learn how to forecast my department budget and submit that for consideration to the people who were making the decision at the time early in my career. As I built on that experience, and you know, I mentioned, you know, overseeing some of the stuff with our conference and events, our development and fundraising, some of our communications and marketing outside of just the government relations that I had experience in, I got to be able to witness and see how some of those budgets were shaped and play a role in shaping them and identifying strategies, opportunities from the revenue and expense side. And I think that that's key. Any chance you get to be able to tackle and understand your department budget within your organization is going to further your career growth and opportunity into an executive director role. You have to have a grasp of your numbers. That's going to be key to success and key to be able to track it. You don't have to be the CFO. You can hire a consultant accountant, you can hire a CFO, you can hire folks to help out with that. But you have to be able to understand the numbers at a high level to be able to explain them to your board and be able to track your progress toward your metrics and whether or not you're going to achieve your budget goals and what, if you're not going to achieve those budget goals, what you need to cut back on immediately and be able to pivot on a dime. So definitely recommend seeking that out if you don't have it now. And it is a key aspect of the role for sure once you get into it.
Thanks you. I want to go to the last phase of our agenda. Tips for success, pitfalls to avoid. Maybe we should make this more of a lightning round. So give me one learning from your first year in the position. Erica?
One tip for learning in first year, I would say spend more time and energy identifying the competencies in your organization than trying to look for and identify the gaps. You'll find the gaps, as Dan said, they make themselves known, but what you really want to understand, who are your high performers? What are your committees that are working really well and accomplishing things? You know, what are the programs that are, and then look at why. Why are those things successful? And really spend your time looking at the competencies, investigating them and identifying them. You'll hear what people think they are when you're coming in. You need to make those judgments for yourself. So again, spend your energy on competencies. The gaps will show up.
Jackie, what was a learning for you in your first year?
I'm going to say that a lot of the learning came out in conversation, but the one thing that I think that we have not touched upon, which I think is very significant, especially as a new ED, is level setting that relationship with your board, that you are their only hire.
Mhm.
You are their only staff person. And having that sort of uncomfortable conversation so that boards do not cross over into the management and the operation of the organization. And as a new ED, that can happen and shift very quickly. And before you know it, you are dealing with issues that pop up from that. So I would say the one lesson, and my board has been very good at this, they will even say it themselves. So I no longer have to say that I am your only employee. I had a foundation council meeting and the treasurer said, I know that we decided that Jackie decided to outsource finance, but keep in mind, that's her job. That we hire Jackie, she's our only employee. The rest of the people and consultants work for her. So make sure that you are level setting that relationship because it can get very dangerous if your board or council members start to seep over into the operation and the management of the association. So that will be my last piece of advice. Thank you.
Well, you just introduced the next webinar topic. Governance could take up an hour. Dan, a learning from your first year?
Yeah, I would say it was a learning that was reinforced. I think that the need to be flexible and adaptable. I came in with a plan, Erica, Jackie, we all came in with plans. And as you learn, be open. I think that that's the key. You have to be open to understanding the organization, understanding. You go in with a perception of whatever job and position you get. With the outside perspective, you don't necessarily have, even with the board and the search committee giving you information, giving you feedback about the running of the organization, they're not going to know everything. So you're not going to know all the details until you get into it. And you got to be open to hearing about what's been done, why it's been done, how it's been done, before you sort of leap to make changes. And I think, I was eager to make changes. And I was able to make some of those changes on the infrastructure side, but some of the changes have had to be delayed and things that way because I've had to pivot and adapt and prioritize certain things in other areas before I could do the other things that I wanted to accomplish. So I think being open to learning and being adaptive is key.
Right. I think I have time for one more lightning round question. And this is in the spirit of transparency and honesty. What is one trap to avoid?
I would say always be your authentic self. I think that we all have a tendency as people who, perform well in our careers that we can sometimes try to evolve our style around who we're faced with, whether it's our leadership, our board, whatever. Be your authentic self always, and you won't go wrong. You don't have to be a pleaser all the time, but be yourself.
Thank you. Dan?
I would say, when you make a decision, at lower levels in an organization, there are, not only do you maybe second guess yourself sometimes, but you have supervisors that second guess you and colleagues that may second guess you. When you're in the executive director role, don't second guess yourself. There are opportunities for that, but once you make a decision, stick with your decisions and move forward. I think that you always have to be moving forward. And if you're second guessing decisions that you've made publicly or too transparently with everybody, I think people will start to lose confidence. And I think, thankfully, I don't think I've stepped in that trap, but I do think it's a trap that I highly recommend avoiding.
Okay. And Jackie?
I think my position would be to reiterate both perspectives, Erica, in terms of being yourself. Be yourself in the interview. I interviewed
From the start.
From the start. I have a nose piercing, as a matter of fact, 2 of them, and I thought about taking them out in the interview. I have tattoos. I thought about covering them up in the interview. And I said, Jackie, that's not who you are. So 100%, so I bring with me 2 nose piercings and 12, 14 tattoos. That is who I am. And I'm not saying that you need to be like me, but I'm saying this is who I am. And I would respect the same from others. So I have a staff member who polishes fingernails. Bring yourself to work. So as you bring your whole self, allow others to bring them whole self. So what if he polishes nails? I'm like, I think you should go with a darker color in the wintertime if you're going to do that. So, but be yourself, allow them to be themselves as well. Accept constructive criticism. You're going to get them. I would say within my first month, I got a harsh criticism from a staff member. It hurt my feelings. because it was not the intent, the way the person absorbed it. And I had to stand back because I was, I got a little emotional about it because I'm far from that person. So I gave myself 24 hours to recover. And then I went back and had a conversation, said, that was not my intention. Here's my attention. And a question that I asked my staff when they were struggling with my decision, I asked them, what would you do if you were me?
Great
If the
advice.
decision is the same, then and I'm always confident that I made a great decision, Dan. And if I make a bad one, I don't hesitate to paddle back and say, I screwed up. But for the most part, we have done all the work that is needed to make a decision based on, and many times, this amount of information, so a short amount of information. We will not have these jobs if we weren't good at that. So again, constructive criticism, receive them, get over it, and move on.
Great. Well, I know we're out of time, and I want to thank the panelists. A couple of takeaways: broaden your experience, say yes, take on responsibilities beyond the functional area you're in. Get yourself a kitchen cabinet, have a plan, and share it in your first year. Communicate, whether that's with staff or with the board. Ask for and welcome feedback. Be flexible, be adaptable, and be your authentic self. Thank you very much, panelists. Jessica?
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Again, here's the slide where we have everyone's email address. I know that we were unable to get to a couple questions, but feel free to send your questions into any of the panelists. And please join us for Sterling Martin Associates' next webinar on March 22nd at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. The title of this one is In Search, Resume, Profile, and Brand. Also, please remember this session is eligible for 1 CAE credit hour. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you so much, panelists, and look forward to seeing everyone soon.
Thanks.
Take care.
Have a great day.